On the first night of our beach vacation, my daughter-in-law Kendra pointed to a tiny, dimly lit table right next to the kitchen doors and assigned me my spot. "You can sit there, Diane. We need the space at the ocean view table to plan our excursions." She didn't even make eye contact. I didn't argue. I just nodded and took my seat, letting a small smile slip. I was remembering that the rental SUV they planned to drive all week was entirely in my name. I raised my son Garrett all by myself after his dad passed away. I've never been one for grand speeches or easy tears. I've always let my actions do the talking. When Garrett invited me to spend a week with them at a coastal resort in Florida, I said yes, thinking we'd finally get some quality time together. But the dynamic shifted the second we stepped foot in the hotel. I'd paid for the entire resort stay and the rental car, yet to Kendra, I was nothing more than a walking ATM and a pesky third wheel. From my little corner, I watched them order expensive bottles of wine and laugh, completely ignoring my existence. The waiter brought me a menu, but I just asked for a sparkling water. My mind felt unusually clear, ice cold, really. I was doing the mental math on every single dollar I'd shelled out for this trip just to make them happy. 2 hours later, as they walked past my table, Kendra tossed an order over her shoulder. "We're leaving at 7 a.m. sharp tomorrow for the yacht tour. Just sleep in. The ocean would probably just make you seasick anyway." "Have a good night," I replied calmly. Tomorrow their real vacation would begin, but so would mine. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed, listening to Garrett and Kendra's muffled laughter through the wall of our adjoining suites. I wasn't angry. I just felt a profound sense of disappointment that quickly morphed into pure determination. For years, I'd put up with Kendra's little slights out of love for my son. Garrett, always passive and terrified of confrontation, just kept his head down and let her run the show, including my bank account. I opened my suitcase and pulled out my iPad. I pulled up the reservation for the private charter boat they were supposed to take the next day. I'd paid over $1,200 for it months ago as an early anniversary gift for them. If I was just useless deadweight for their itinerary, there was absolutely no reason I should keep bankrolling their luxury lifestyle. With 3 taps on the screen, I canceled the booking. The marina refunded the money immediately, minus a small cancellation fee that I was more than happy to eat. Next, I reached into my purse and pulled out the rental agreement for the SUV. It was in my name, secured with my credit card and my signature. I took the key from the inner pocket of my jacket and set it on the nightstand. They had a spare, but I knew exactly where Garrett kept it, in the front pocket of his hiking backpack. While they slept soundly next door, I slipped out into the hallway, quietly entered the shared living space of our villa, and swiped that second key. I went back to my room and packed my bags in complete silence. I wasn't going to beg for their attention or demand basic respect. Outside, the moon reflected off the calm, steady ocean. They had no idea that their only ride for the next morning was currently sitting in my purse. By 6:30 the next morning, I was already down in the resort lobby, sipping an espresso. I watched Garrett and Kendra come down the stairs, decked out in the designer resort, where that ironically I had bought for them. They walked right past me toward the breakfast buffet, completely glued to their phones. They didn't even glance in my direction. I waited exactly 15 minutes. Once I was sure they were busy ordering their custom omelets, I walked out to the parking lot. The spacious white SUV was waiting for me. I climbed in, adjusted the mirrors, started the engine, and pulled out of the resort. I wasn't heading to the marina. I had done some digging the night before and found a charming, artsy little town nestled in the mountains a couple of hours inland. As I hit the highway, I flipped my phone to Do Not Disturb and tossed it into the glove compartment. The coastal scenery slowly gave way to lush green mountains and winding roads. I could actually feel the tight knot that had been sitting in my chest for months begin to loosen. The crisp air blew in through the open window, reminding me of who I was before I became the mother-in-law who pays for everything. I pulled into the mountain town around 9 a.m. It was picturesque, lined with pottery studios and cobblestone streets. I parked in front of a gorgeous little boutique hotel with a flower-filled courtyard and booked a room for myself. As I signed the register, the front desk clerk gave me a warm, genuine smile, the first real human connection I'd had in days. I settled into the cozy, wood-paneled room and finally grabbed my phone from the glove box. The screen lit up instantly. The chaos had officially started. 15 missed calls from Garrett and 20 frantic text messages from Kendra. Where is the SUV? We got to the marina and the boat is canceled. What did you do? We are stranded at the hotel. This is insane. I brewed a cup of tea using the little kettle in my room, sat out on the balcony, and dialed my son's number. He picked up on the first ring. Mom, where are you? Kendra is furious. We lost the whole morning and the charter company said you canceled the reservation. Garrett blurted out, his voice shaking with stress. I could hear my daughter-in-law yelling in the background. I'm up in the mountains, Garrett. I answered evenly, taking a slow sip of my tea. You two made it very clear you wanted space and that I didn't fit into your plans today. I just gave you exactly what you asked for. But you took the car and you canceled the boat trip you bought us, he protested. The SUV is in my name, honey, and I paid for the boat. If you'd rather spend your vacation without me, you'll have to fund it yourselves. I left the villa paid for, so at least you have a place to sleep. I didn't give him a chance to reply. I hung up and temporarily blocked Kendra's number so I wouldn't have to deal with her toxic texts. Next, I called the beach resort. As the primary name on the villa reservation, I had them remove my credit card for any incidental charges. If they wanted room service drinks by the pool or extra meals, it was coming out of their own pockets. I knew Kendra's habits well. She loved living way beyond her means, and Garrett's checking account was usually running on fumes. I turned my phone screen off and went out for a stroll through town. The sun was warming the cobblestone streets. Garrett had been left speechless by the dial tone, but the real wake-up call was waiting for them back home. I spent 2 incredible days in that little artisan town. I ate whatever I wanted, bought some beautiful ceramics for my garden, and slept without anyone dictating my schedule or making me feel invisible. On the 3rd day, I decided my vacation was over. I drove back to the city, heading straight for my house. My home is my sanctuary. It's a large, well-kept house that my late husband and I worked hard for. For a while now, Kendra had been dropping hints that the house was way too big for just me. She thought I should sell it to help them buy a luxury condo, or just let them move in and take over the entire 2nd floor. I'd always brushed off those comments, but now I saw her hostile takeover plan for what it was. When I walked through the front door, the silence wrapped around me like a warm hug. I went straight to the entryway and checked the key rack. The spare key I'd given Garrett, strictly for emergencies, was gone. I picked up my phone and called Frank, the neighborhood locksmith. Hey, Frank, I need the deadbolts changed on my front and back doors today. High security, please. He was there in under 30 minutes. While he worked on swapping out the mechanisms, I brewed some coffee in the kitchen. This wasn't petty revenge. It was basic self-protection. I needed a hard physical boundary. I wasn't going to let them barge into my private sanctuary to demand explanations or try to guilt-trip me. When Frank finished securing the shiny new strike plates, I paid him in cash and pocketed my new keys. Then I opened my laptop at the dining room table and took a deep breath. It was time to clean house. The dashboard of my online banking showed a long list of automatic drafts. For years, under the guise of helping them get on their feet, I had been covering a lot of Garrett and Kendra's bills. With a few precise clicks of the mouse, I started canceling them one by one. First, Garrett's auto insurance policy, $140 a month. Click. Canceled. Next, the family cell phone plan. Click. canceled. Then I moved on to their streaming services and the supplemental emergency credit card I had given Garrett, which Kendra usually maxed out on clothes anyway. It only took 15 minutes of online admin, but the weight that lifted off my shoulders was enormous. For so long, I had convinced myself that if I stopped paying for these things, I'd lose my son, that Kendra would weaponize him against me out of spite. Now I realized I had already lost him. He had become a puppet for a woman who just viewed me as a voiceless ATM. I printed out the cancellation confirmations and slipped them into a manila envelope. I didn't feel a single ounce of guilt. I felt a mental clarity that finally gave me my dignity back. If Kendra found my presence so irritating, she could stop burdening herself with my financial support too. I threw together a light dinner and sat down to watch TV, listening to the wind rattle the windows. I had reclaimed control of my money and my space. 2 days later, I was reading on the sofa when I heard a taxi idle outside my yard. The beach vacation was over. They were home. I heard the taxi doors slam, followed by Garrett's heavy footsteps dragging up the front walkway, shadowed by the click-clack of Kendra's heels. I stayed on the couch, turning the page of my book, just listening. The metallic scrape of a key sliding into the lock echoed in the hallway, then the jiggling. The key wouldn't turn. "What's wrong with this thing?" I heard Garrett mutter. "Let me try. You're probably doing it wrong." Kendra snapped, shoving against the wood impatiently. She jiggled it again, uselessly. I stood up, calmly, walked over to the door, and slid the chain lock into place before opening it just a crack. Garrett had dark circles under his eyes and looked totally drained. Kendra's face was flushed red with anger. "Mom, the key's not working. Is the lock broken?" he asked, resting a hand on the door frame. "The lock works perfectly, Garrett. I had it changed," I said smoothly. Kendra peeked over my son's shoulder. "Are you out of your mind?" "We came to grab the suitcases we left in the guest room and talk about what you pulled on the trip." "Open the door." Everything we needed to say was made perfectly clear at that restaurant, Kendra. "You showed me my place, and now I'm showing you yours. And it's outside my house." "Mom, please, our cards are completely tapped out. We can't even afford the cab fare back to our apartment. Kendra maxed everything out at the hotel. Just let us in." Garrett pleaded, trying to wedge his foot in the gap. "Oh, you're adults," I replied, sliding a plastic trash bag holding their guest room belongings through the crack. I gently closed the door until it clicked completely, ignoring Kendra's screams echoing in the empty street. For the first time, they couldn't just bulldoze their way through my front door. The next few days were a masterclass in patience. My phone was blowing up with notifications. A few relatives called me, clearly fed Kendra's twisted version of events, demanding to know why I had thrown my son out on the street. I refused to fall into the trap of defending myself. When my sister-in-law called to scold me, I cut straight to the point. Kendra disrespected me and Garrett let her. All I did was cut off my financial support. "If you're so worried about them, feel free to give them your credit card." The calls stopped almost immediately. Kendra tried coming back once more to demand I restore their cell phone service, threatening to cut me off from any future grandchildren. I just watched her from the window, without opening the door, watering my geraniums until she finally gave up and stormed off. Threats only work on people who are actually scared. On Friday afternoon, Garrett sent me a different kind of text. There was no trace of his wife's nagging in the message. He asked to meet me alone at a coffee shop downtown. I agreed. I needed to see if this forced distance had managed to crack the total control Kendra had over him. I arrived 5 minutes early. Garrett was already sitting at a small corner table, hands tightly clasped over the wooden surface, staring blankly into a black coffee. When he saw me approach, he stood up awkwardly. There were no hugs, just a polite nod. I took a seat across from him. Looking at him sitting there, he looked like a guy who had just jolted awake from a very long, exhausting nightmare. "Kendra is staying at her mom's." was the first thing Garrett said, rubbing his face tiredly. She says she can't live in peace knowing that you control me. I let out a short laugh, not a mean one, just pure disbelief. Garrett, I don't control you. If I did, I wouldn't have let you two shove me at a table next to the kitchen doors while you toasted with my money. I was a coward, Mom. I know. But she puts so much pressure on me. She controls my entire paycheck, and when you cut the automatic payments, she realized we didn't have enough to maintain her lifestyle. She blamed me for the whole thing. I didn't feel pity. I felt resolute. I slid the manila envelope across the table. It held all the cancellation notices for the insurance phones and credit cards. You are a grown man, Garrett, I said, looking him dead in the eye. If you choose to let someone treat you like an extension of their wallet, that's on you. But I refuse to play that game anymore. Here is the proof of everything I've stopped paying for. Your financial life is 100% yours from today on. Garrett looked down at the papers. I was half expecting him to get angry or throw a tantrum, but his shoulders actually relaxed a little. He was staring at the hard numbers, the real cost of his independence. You're right, he muttered, slipping the envelope into his jacket. He didn't offer a dramatic apology or promise me the moon. He just nodded, finally accepting the reality of his new situation. I stood up, paid for my own coffee, and said goodbye. I left him sitting there looking at those papers, knowing full well that his next step was entirely up to him. A whole month passed without us seeing each other. I used the time to landscape my backyard and joined a local book club. Without my account bleeding out every month, I had the extra cash to buy some beautiful new plants and enjoy my evenings free from the constant stress of someone else's drama. My house felt bright, peaceful, and totally mine again. One morning my phone rang. It was Garrett. His voice sounded different, grounded, and with a quiet confidence I hadn't heard from him in years. Mom, I moved out. I rented a small apartment close to the office. Just for me, he announced. He didn't explicitly use the word divorce, but the writing was on the wall. He was finally taking the reins of his own life and living within his actual means. I'm really glad to hear that, honey, I said, pruning a dead leaf off one of my rose bushes. I was wondering, could I come over for Sunday dinner? I'll pick up dessert, and I'm paying, he added with a slight nervous chuckle. I smiled, feeling a genuine warmth spread through my chest. I would love that. But just so you know, we're eating in the formal dining room right by the big window. Sunday rolled around, and Garrett arrived right on time. That suffocating passivity he always carried around Kendra was completely gone. We talked about his job, my books, and actual realistic plans for the future. Not pipe dreams funded by my savings. In the end, I realized that a mother's true love isn't about solving every problem. It's about knowing when to draw a line. I had taken back my peace and my dignity, and in doing so, I'd given my son the hard push he desperately needed to finally become the master of his own life. Ultimately, the deepest lesson from this whole ordeal had nothing to do with money. It was all about self-respect. Realizing that you can't buy your way into being valued by someone is a bitter pill to swallow, but it's incredibly liberating. Cutting off financial support isn't an act of revenge. It's just refusing to fund a dynamic that breaks your heart. Sometimes the best way to love a child isn't by fixing their life or enduring disrespect just because you're terrified of losing them. It's by giving them the cold, hard space to wake up to reality. True love requires boundaries, because only when you value yourself and protect your peace do you teach others exactly how you deserve to be treated.